Karsic Starport was never quiet, but that day it felt as if the whole station was holding its breath. The vast hall was a storm of colors and lights, with traders shouting over the hum of machines and alien voices mixing in a strange chorus. The smell of oil and spice filled the air, and above the crowd's huge screens showed departure times. In a dozen different languages, ships came and went with steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of a giant city in space. In the middle of the chaos, a ripple moved through the crowd. People turned their heads and froze. Whispers started first like a faint breeze, then louder, until they rolled across the hall like a wave. The Zereth warlord Ka-Thor had arrived. Even the station guards kept their eyes down, because everyone knew his name, and everyone feared it. He was not just a leader, he was a destroyer of worlds. His armor was black and edged in silver, each plate etched with symbols that told stories of battles won. His eyes burned like molten metal, and the air around him seemed heavier, as if the gravity itself bowed to his will. Merchants stepped back from their stalls. Travelers moved away from his path. A mother pulled her child behind her, and an alien courier dropped his package and ran. No one wanted to be near him. No one wanted to draw his attention. No one except for one man. From the far side of the hall, a young human walked toward the warlord. His clothes were plain, and his jacket was worn at the edges. He carried a small metal case in one hand, and his pace was slow and steady. His dark hair fell into his eyes, and yet he seemed in no rush to brush it away. He looked like someone who had just stepped off a transport from some forgotten world, but his eyes were sharp and calm as they locked on Ka-Thor. The crowd parted without a word, forming a clear path between the human and the warlord. Ka-Thor stopped and turned his head the way a predator notices movement in the grass. His warriors stiffened, ready to act, but the warlord lifted one clawed hand, and they stayed still. The two stood facing each other. The noise of the station faded into silence. Even the distant thrum of the docking engines felt quieter. The human looked up at the towering figure before him. His lips curved into a small, almost playful smile, and he said in a clear voice that carried through the hall, "You are cute." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then every sound seemed to rush back. At once, gasps from the crowd, a drop cup clattering to the floor, a sharp intake of breath from one of Ka-Thor's warriors. The idea of calling the galaxy's most feared predator cute was beyond madness. It was like walking into a storm and asking the lightning if it wanted to dance. Ka-Thor's eyes narrowed, the molten glow within them flaring brighter. His jaw shifted in a way that spoke of barely held rage. He leaned down until his shadow fell over the human, and his voice came like the grind of steel on stone. "You will explain why you insult me, or you will die slowly." The human's smile did not fade. His fingers tightened slightly on the metal case, but his stance stayed relaxed. He spoke again, with the same calm tone. "I do not mean insult." Ka-Thor studied him, as if weighing the truth of those words. Then a faint twitch crossed his mouth, though it was impossible to tell if it was anger or amusement. The warlord's warriors shifted again, hands near their weapons, ready to spill blood with a single command. Yet Ka-Thor did not give it. Instead, he reached out and placed one massive clawed finger under the edge of the metal case, lifting it slightly, as if testing its weight. "What is in this?" he asked, his voice quieter now, but no less dangerous. The human met his gaze and said, "Only something you would not kill if you saw it." The warlord tilted his head, the glow of his eyes shifting, as if some thought passed through his mind that the others could not read. The silence stretched until it became almost painful. Then Ka-Thor spoke again, "Follow me." Without looking back, he turned and began to walk toward the docking gates, his warriors moving with him. The crowd fell away from their path. The human hesitated only for a breath, then stepped forward, walking in the warlord's shadow, the metal case still in his hand. The station's watchers whispered to each other, wondering if they had just seen a man step into his own death, or something far stranger. The docking doors slid open with a hiss, revealing the darkness of the warlord's flagship beyond. The human walked through them, and the doors closed behind him, sealing him away from the light of the starport. Some swore they saw Ka-Thor glance back for a moment, as if curious about his new guest. Others said it was only a trick of the light, but all agreed on one thing: no one had ever called the predator cute and lived. Yet this human was still breathing, and that was perhaps the most dangerous thing of all. Eli Drake walked in the cold corridors of the Zereth warlord's flagship. The walls seemed alive, shifting slowly, as if breathing, and the floor carried a faint vibration, like the heart of some vast living beast. Underfoot, the air smelled of metal, oil, and something sharp. He could not place. Warriors in black and silver armor moved around them, each one taller then him, each one armed with weapons that hummed with quiet menace, and each one keeping their eyes on the strange human who had dared to call their leader cute. Thor led the way, his heavy steps echoing through the hall. Without pause, he moved with the confidence of a predator that feared nothing, his long black cloak brushing the ground as if it were a shadow that refused to leave him. His warriors followed in a loose formation, the space between them closing whenever Eli slowed, and opening again whenever he matched the warlord's pace. It was a silent message that they could close in on him at any moment. They entered a chamber lit by shifting blue light. The walls were covered in symbols cut deep into the metal, each mark filled with glowing liquid that pulsed faintly like veins carrying strange energy. The air was colder here, the sound of the ship's heartbeat quieter, as if they had stepped into a place set apart for something older and more private. Thor turned slowly, his glowing eyes fixed on Eli. "You will explain now." His voice was calm, but there was weight in it, like a mountain waiting to fall. "Explain why you spoke such a word to me in the starport, why you risked your life in front of my warriors, why you thought it wise to speak of me in that way." Eli did not flinch, his fingers still curled around the small metal case, as if it was part of him. He took a slow breath before answering. "I said what I saw," he replied. "You are exactly how I imagined, but not in the way you think." Thor's head tilted slightly, the molten glow of his eyes shifting shadows across his scarred face. "Imagined," he repeated the word, as if tasting it. "Imagined in what way?" Eli's mouth curved just a little, not enough to call it a smile. "In the stories I heard as a boy, you were more than a destroyer. You were a force, the kind that sweeps across the stars and leaves nothing untouched. You were untouchable, dangerous, but also magnificent. I thought you would be like a great beast with claws of fire and eyes that could see through lies, and I was right and wrong at the same time." The warriors around the chamber shifted their stance, some with confusion, some with disbelief. Thor's gaze did not move from Eli's face. "You insult me, and you praise me in the same breath," he said, "and you expect to live." "I expect nothing," Eli replied, "but I know this. If you wanted me dead, I would be gone already. You brought me here for a reason, not to spill my blood on a starport floor." Thor's jaw moved slowly, his teeth like shards of obsidian under the blue light. "You are not wrong, human, but your presence here is still dangerous for you and for me." Eli's grip on the case tightened slightly. Then he said, "The danger is already here, whether you see it or not." Before Thor could answer, the walls shuddered, a deep vibration moving through the floor. Like a distant roar, the light shifted, as if the room itself felt the change. One of the warriors spoke in a sharp alien tongue. Thor's eyes narrowed, and he turned toward a display that unfolded from the wall. The image showed a dark shape moving fast in the void behind them, its surface glinting with strange patterns of light. "The Raven Syndicate." Thor said the name like a curse. Eli's gaze hardened. "They have found me." Thor looked at him sharply. "Found you, not me." "They are not here for you," Eli replied, his voice steady. "They are here for what I carry." The warlord's eyes dropped to the case, and then back to Eli. "You will open it." "No," Eli said flatly. The warriors tensed their hands near their weapons, but Thor raised one clawed hand, and they froze. His gaze locked on Eli's, as if trying to read his mind. "Why would the Syndicate chase you across the galaxy for this case?" he asked, his tone heavy with suspicion. "Because what is inside can change everything," Eli said quietly. "If they get it, they will burn worlds. Without thought, they will use it until there is nothing left but ash and silence." Thor stared at him for a long moment, then his mouth curved slightly. "But it was not a smile. If what you say is true, then you are a fool to carry it alone, and a greater fool to walk into my path with it." "Perhaps," Eli said, "but fools have a way of surviving when no one expects them to." The ship shook again, harder this time, a low hum filling the air. The warriors barked reports in their language. Thor's voice cut through them like a blade to battle stations. "Drive them away." He turned to Eli and spoke low and sharp. "You will stay where I put you until I decide whether to throw you into space or not." Eli's eyes did not leave Thor's. "I will stay, but only because I want to see how you fight." Thor's molten gaze flared brighter. Then he turned and strode from the chamber, his warriors following, some throwing dark looks at Eli. As they passed, the last one sealed the door with a hiss. Eli was alone in the cold chamber, the shifting blue light painting his face. He set the case down on the floor and knelt beside it, his fingers tracing the faint lines along its surface. The hum within it was stronger, now pulsing like a heartbeat. He spoke softly, almost as if to himself. "They're closer than I thought." Somewhere beyond the walls, the sound of weapons fire began, a low, steady thrum of battle. The floor shook under his knees. The air carried a faint smell of something burning. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again, calm and certain. The syndicate would come for him soon. But what Thor did not know was that they were not the only ones following the case. And when the other found them, it would not matter who the warlord was or how many weapons he carried. Something older than the syndicate was coming, and it would not care about titles or fear or even survival. Eli Drake stood in the strange chamber, the blue light from the walls shifting like the glow of deep ocean currents, and the hum in the metal case beside him had grown stronger with each passing minute. Outside the door, the muffled sounds of battle pulsed through the air like a heartbeat, weapons discharging, shields flaring, hull plates shuddering under enemy fire. The warlord's ship was under siege, yet there was no fear in Eli's eyes, only a calm watchfulness, as if he had been in worse places before. The chamber's walls were unlike anything he had ever seen. Each surface seemed to move in tiny ripples, like liquid metal, yet it was solid to the touch. Strange symbols flowed across them, vanishing and reappearing, as if the ship was speaking to itself in a language no outsider could understand. The cold here was deep, not the cold of space, but the cold of something ancient, something that had existed long before the warlord claimed this vessel. The door slid open without sound, and Thor entered, his black armor streaked with faint scars of energy fire. His eyes still burned like molten metal, but there was a sharper edge to his expression, now the look of a predator forced to acknowledge a dangerous prey. He stepped inside, and the door sealed behind him, the sounds of battle cut off, as if the room itself refused to let them in. "The syndicate ship will not fall back," he said. "They fight harder than they should for a single human. What is inside that case human?" Eli rose slowly, his hand resting on the metal case, as if it was part of his own body. "I told you before," he said. "If you saw it, you would not kill it." Thor's claws flexed against the hilt of the weapon at his side. "Show me," he demanded. Eli's gaze held steady. There was no tremor in his voice when he answered, "If I open this, you will not be able to unsee what is inside, and once you see it, you will be forced to choose, and that choice will follow you for the rest of your life." Thor's molten eyes narrowed. Then he took a slow step forward, the chambers light glinting off the edges of his armor. "And I am not afraid of choice, human." The hum from the case deepened, as if it sensed the nearness of a decision. Eli knelt and unlocked the first of 3 latches, each one opening with a soft click. The second latch released, and the temperature in the chamber dropped. The third latch lifted, and the case opened, a thin line of blue light spilling out across the floor. Inside floated a small crystalline creature no bigger than Eli's hand, its body shaped like a cluster of faceted shards, each one glowing faintly. It drifted in the air as if it weighed nothing. Tiny arcs of pale light danced between its points, and its core pulsed with slow, steady light, like the heartbeat of a living thing. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, were tiny bright sparks that seemed to shift color as they looked upon Thor. The warlord froze, his hand lowering from his weapon. Without thought, his eyes locked on the creature, as if caught between wonder and calculation. "What is this?" he asked, his voice lower now. "It is called a starborn," Eli replied. "It is the last of its kind." Thor's eyes did not leave the creature. "Why would the syndicate want this?" "Because its core holds enough energy to burn 100 worlds," Eli said. "And because in the right hands it can do more than destroy. It can create, it can heal, it can reshape what has been broken." Thor stepped closer. The starborn drifted toward him with a slow, graceful movement, its faint glow reflecting in his molten eyes. His clawed hand reached out, but stopped just short, as if some instinct warned him not to touch it. Eli's voice was quiet. "If you harm it, you will bring something here, something older than you, older than your people, older than the syndicate. It will not stop, it will not sleep, and it will not forgive." Before Thor could speak, the ship shuddered violently, throwing both of them slightly off balance. The blue light on the walls flickered, a deep vibration rolled through the floor. This was not weapons fire, it was something else, something heavier. Thor turned to the door, snapping a command in his own language, but before the warrior outside could answer, the walls of the chamber began to ripple in great waves, the symbols twisting into shapes neither of them recognized. The starborn's glow brightened, its tiny sparks flaring brighter, as if in fear. "What is happening?" Thor demanded. "They are boarding," Eli said, "but not the syndicate." The door slid open again. This time a rush of cold air swept in, carrying the faint smell of burnt stone and dust. 3 of Cathor's warriors stood there, their armor blackened, as if from fire, their movements sharp and tense. The leader spoke quickly in the warlord's language. Thor's expression darkened. He turned back to Eli and the Starborn. "You will come with me now." Eli closed the case, the hum now sharper, like a warning. Thor grabbed his arm and pulled him into the hall, the warriors closing in around them. As they moved quickly through the living corridors, the walls shifted, as if making way for them, yet every turn felt darker, every shadow deeper. They passed through a long corridor, where no light touched the ceiling. The air here was thick and heavy. The faint sound of whispers seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Thor's pace quickened, his grip on Eli unyielding, the warriors' eyes scanning every shadow, their weapons humming softly, as if ready to strike at unseen shapes. The ship trembled again. This time a strange tearing sound echoed through the hull, like fabric ripping in some impossible distance. Lights along the walls flared, then died one by one. The whispers grew louder, not words, but sounds like the rustle of dry leaves mixed with a low growl. Eli spoke low enough only Thor could hear. "It is getting closer." "What is getting closer?" the warlord demanded. "The thing that hunts the Starborn," Eli answered. Thor's molten eyes flicked toward the case, then back to Eli. "You will explain when we are clear." They reached a large chamber where the floor sloped upward toward a viewing platform. Thor shoved Eli ahead of him, and they stepped into the open space. Beyond the thick glass of the viewport, the void stretched black and endless. The Syndicate ship hung in the distance, still exchanging fire with the warlord's fleet, but beyond it something else was moving. It was massive, yet it did not seem to have a clear shape. The stars behind it bent and wavered, as if the thing itself pulled at the fabric of space. Parts of it seemed solid, like black stone, others like shifting shadow, and in its center burned a faint pale light that pulsed in the same rhythm as the Starborn's glow. Thor stared at it in silence, his molten eyes narrowing slowly. "What is that?" Eli's voice was calm but heavy. "The hollow, and it is already here." The Starborn inside the case pulsed brighter, as if answering its hunter, and in that moment Thor understood why the human had walked up to him in the starport and called him cute, because compared to what was coming, even the galaxy's most feared predator was small. The hollow moved in the distance like a shadow given life, swallowing stars and bending the space around it into strange shapes that made the eyes ache. Thor had faced fleets, assassins, and beasts born on death worlds, but never had he seen something that made the void itself seem alive and hostile. The Syndicate ship still fought outside, but its fire was weakening, as if its crew too had begun to feel the pull of the thing that was coming. Eli Drake stood beside the warlord, his hand resting lightly on the metal case that held the Starborn, the glow inside it pulsing faster with each passing breath. Thor could feel the faint thrum of its energy, even through the armored plates on his arms. His warriors stood tense around them, their eyes flicking from the view beyond the glass to the dark corridors behind, as if danger could come from either direction at any moment. "The hollow will not stop," Eli said softly. "It has found the Starborn signal, and it will follow it through every system, every shadow, until it has it in its grasp. It does not care who stands in its way, not the Syndicate, not you, not me. It will strip the life from everything that lies between it and what it hunts." Thor turned his molten gaze on Eli, then on the case. "You carry a thing that calls a death that cannot be fought, and yet you walk into my ship and bring it here. Why?" "Because you are the only one in this sector who can stand long enough to help me get it to safety," Eli answered. "The Syndicate wants the Starborn to use it. The hollow wants it to end it. You are the only one the Syndicate fears enough to keep them from swarming us, and the only one stubborn enough to defy something like that." Thor gave a low sound that might have been a growl or a laugh. "You speak as if you know me, human." "I know the stories," Eli said, "and so far they match the truth." The warlord's warriors shifted their stance as another tremor passed through the ship, this one sharp enough to make the glass of the viewport hum. Faintly reports came in fast in the warlord's own tongue. One of the fleet's escort ships had just vanished, swallowed by the hollow's approach, not destroyed by weapons, not torn apart by impact, simply gone, as if it had been erased. "We move now," Thor ordered, his voice like the crack of a blade being drawn from stone. He turned from the viewport and motioned for the warriors to close in around Eli. "Keep the case sealed, and keep it close to your body," he said without looking back. If you lose it, I will end you before the hollow does. They moved quickly through the corridors, the living walls of the ship, shifting to clear their path. Yet even here the air felt heavier, colder. The whispers Eli had heard before seemed closer. Now shapes flickered in the corners of vision, never there. When one turned to look, Cawthor's pace was steady but faster than before, his cloak brushing the walls, as if the ship itself leaned toward him. They reached the main hangar, a vast open space lit by strips of pale blue light. Along the ceiling, small attack craft hung in their cradles. Like sleeping predators, warriors rushed to their stations, preparing for launch. Some, in the airless void beyond, already darting through the chaos to harry the Syndicate vessel. The warlord's flagship could fight, but Eli could see that Cawthor had no intention of holding this position forever. A dark shape burst into the hangar from the far end. A Syndicate strike team, their armor glossy black marked with the red Talon emblem, their weapons already spitting arcs of green light. The warlord's warriors moved to intercept the fight. Was fast, brutal, the clang of blade against armor, the hiss of plasma fire, the air filling with the acrid scent of scorched metal and blood. Cawthor moved through it like a storm, each strike precise, each motion ending a life without pause, his molten eyes never leaving Eli. Eli crouched behind a storage unit, the case pressed tight to his chest, the Starborn's light flaring inside. As if sensing the violence around them, one of the Syndicate fighters broke through the line, rushing toward him, a blade raised high. Before it could strike, Cawthor's hand clamped around the attacker's helmet and crushed it with a wet crack, tossing the body aside without slowing. "You will not fall here, human," Cawthor growled. "You still owe me the truth." The last of the Syndicate fighters fell under the blades of the warlord's warriors, and for a moment the hangar was quiet save for the thrum of engines. Cawthor motioned for one of the smaller craft to be readied, its sleek frame dark as night, its hull lined with strange runes that glimmered faintly. "We take this ship," he said. "My flagship will hold the Syndicate, but the hollow will not be stopped, not by this vessel, and not here. We move fast, and we move now." Eli stepped toward the craft, the case still in his hands, and asked, "Where will we go?" Cawthor's gaze flicked toward the void beyond the hangar doors, somewhere it cannot follow for a time. They boarded the craft, Cawthor at the controls, his hands moving across alien instruments. With the ease of long habit, the warriors sealed the hatch behind them, and the engines roared to life. The hangar doors split open, revealing the chaos outside, the flagship trading fire with the Syndicate vessel, while far beyond in the darkness the hollow continued its slow, terrible approach. The smaller craft shot forward into the void, its hull shuddering as it broke free of the flagship's protective field. Cawthor steered them through the wreckage of the escort ship, past burning debris and drifting bodies, the stars wheeling slowly as they turned toward the far edge of the system. Behind them the hollow seemed to swell larger in the darkness, its pale central light pulsing faster, shadows stretching outward like vast claws reaching for them. The Syndicate ship wheeled to pursue, ignoring the flagship entirely, as if Eli and the case were the only prey that mattered. Cawthor's voice was steady, though the heat in his eyes burned hotter. "Hold tight, human. I will see you through this storm, but when it ends you will tell me everything." Eli said nothing. He only held the case tighter, the hum inside now deep and steady like a drumbeat in his bones. In the reflection of the cockpit glass, he could see the Starborn's faint glow flickering in rhythm with the distant light at the heart of the hollow, as if the two were calling to each other across the dark. The warlord's hands tightened on the controls, the craft's engines flaring brighter as they pushed harder into the void each second, pulling them further from the flagship, further from the Syndicate's guns, but not far enough from the thing that hunted them. The hunt had begun, and there would be no turning back. The small craft cut through the void like a blade, Cawthor's hand steady on the controls, his molten eyes fixed on the star map ahead. The Syndicate vessel trailed behind them, relentless, and beyond it in the far darkness the hollow followed, slower than the Syndicate, but inevitable, like a tide that could not be turned. The engines hummed with a deep, steady note, and the ship's hull groaned faintly, as if aware of the danger pursuing them. Eli Drake sat in the seat behind the warlord, the metal case still clutched in his hands, the glow from within slipping through the seams in soft pulses. The hum inside matched the rhythm of his heartbeat. His gaze stayed on the void beyond the cockpit glass, but his mind was turning over the same thought again, and again. The moment would come when Cawthor would demand to see what lay inside, and when it did there would be no going back. The warlord spoke without turning his head. The Hollow is far older than my people, he said, older than the Syndicate, older than the borders and wars of the galaxy. It was not born, it was found drifting at the edge of known space. The first ships to see it never returned. Those who studied its path learn that it follows something, always something, and when it reaches its prey it leaves nothing alive. Eli's voice was quiet. Then you know why it hunts the Starborn. Kathor's hands tightened on the controls. I can guess its hunger is not for worlds, but for what lies inside them. Eli leaned forward, slightly the case between his knees. Then you know we cannot outrun it forever. The warlord gave a low sound that might have been agreement, and then he spoke again. Open the case, human. Eli's fingers hesitated on the latches. He knew the moment Kathor saw the Starborn, not as a prize, not as a weapon, but as what it truly was. The path ahead would change the Syndicate. Would not matter. The Hollow would not matter. Everything would be decided by the choice the warlord made in that instant. He undid the first latch, then the second. The hum deepening, the temperature in the cabin dropping, as if the light inside carried the chill of deep space. The third latch released, and the case opened. The Starborn floated into the air, weightless and graceful, its crystalline form turning slowly, each facet catching the faint light of the cabin and breaking it into 1,000 tiny colors. Arcs of pale energy leapt from shard to shard like miniature lightning, and at its core a soft pulse glowed brighter as it turned toward Kathor. The warlord's gaze locked on the creature, his molten eyes reflecting the shifting colors. He did not move to touch it. Instead, he spoke low. What is it truly? Eli watched the Starborn drift closer to Kathor, its sparks playing over the edge of his armor. This is the last remnant of a people older than your oldest myths. They were builders and dreamers. They shaped suns and carved rivers. In the void, they left the galaxy better than they found it, but they are gone, and the Starborn is all that remains. Its kind were not soldiers, they were seeds. Seeds, Kathor repeated, his voice heavy with disbelief. Seeds, Eli said, nodding. If placed in the heart of a dying world, it will restore it. If placed in the ruins of a shattered system, it will call life back from the dust. It is creation itself, in a form that can be carried in your hand, and that is why the Syndicate wants it. They see not life, but power, worlds loyal to them forever, bound by the gift only they can give, and that is why the Hollow hunts it, because the force that creates life is also the only thing that can undo it. Kathor's eyes narrowed. You mean the Starborn can kill the Hollow? Eli's voice was quiet. It can, but only once. The warlord looked from Eli to the Starborn, then back. The Syndicate's weapons are nothing compared to something that can erase what should not exist. But tell me, human, why bring it to me? Because Eli said you will not give it to the Syndicate, and you will not waste it on your own glory. And because if I die before reaching where I must go, the Starborn will choose whether to stay with you or destroy itself rather than be taken. Kathor's claws flexed slowly, his gaze never leaving Eli's face. And how can you be sure of this choice? Because Eli said softly, it has already chosen once before to save me. The Starborn drifted back toward Eli, its glow dimming slightly, as if tired. Kathor's gaze followed it, and in that silence the ship shuddered violently, alarms flaring across the control panel. The Syndicate vessel had closed the distance, weapons fire streaking past the hull. Kathor cursed in his own tongue, and threw the ship into a sharp turn, the Starborn's light flaring in alarm. They are trying to disable us, Eli said, gripping the case. They will not destroy the ship while they think they can take it intact. Kathor's voice was cold. Then they will be disappointed. He triggered a series of commands, the ship's side panels sliding open to reveal concealed weapons pods. Arcs of energy flared from the craft, striking the Syndicate ships forward. Shields, the void lit in brief flashes of white and green. The Syndicate vessel returned fire, rocking the smaller craft hard. Kathor steadied the controls, but his gaze flicked to the Starborn, as if calculating something Eli could not read. Another strike hit their aft engines, and the warning lights shifted from amber to deep red. Eli's voice was sharp. You cannot fight both the Syndicate and the Hollow. Then we make the choice now, Kathor growled. Either we use the Starborn to end the Hollow here, or we run and pray we find a place it cannot reach. The Starborn pulsed brighter, its light filling the cabin, and in that glow Eli saw the truth. There would be no running. The Hollow would come for them until it was ended. He met Kathor's eyes. The decision is yours, warlord. The Syndicate ship closed fast. The Hollow's shadow spread wider across the stars, and in the cramped cabin of the small craft Kathor's molten gaze burned as he turned the ship, not away from the danger, but directly toward it. The hollow loomed ahead, filling the void like a living eclipse, its vast shadow blotting out whole clusters of stars. The syndicate ship broke off, its pursuit at the sight of it, its crew, knowing the fate of those who wandered too close. The warlord's small craft cut through the darkness toward the shifting mass. Thor's hands firm on the controls, his molten eyes unblinking. Eli sat behind him, the starborn floating free, now its glow brighter than before, as if it, too, knew the time had come. The closer they came, the stranger the space around them became. Streaks of light bent away from the hollow, arcs of faint color rippled across the blackness, like oil on water. The stars themselves seemed to shiver. Eli could feel a deep hum in his bones, not from the engines, but from the thing ahead, the kind of sound that made the mind want to turn inward and hide. Thor spoke, without looking back. Human, if you have lied to me about what the starborn can do, I will kill you before this thing does. If I lied, Eli said, you would already be dead. The hollow would not wait for you to see it clearly. It would take your mind first and leave your body empty. The warlord's claws tightened on the controls, then let go, one hand reaching toward the weapon at his side, though they both knew that no blade could cut what waited ahead. The hollow shifted as they drew near, its shape changing with every heartbeat, sometimes like a mountain of black stone, sometimes like a storm cloud lit from within, sometimes only a great void that pulled at the edges of sight. In its center the pale light pulsed slow and steady, answering the starborn's glow each beat, drawing them closer together like two magnets too strong to resist. The ship's systems began to fail, lights, flickering displays, showing nonsense readings. Thor's warriors would have called it the touch of ghosts if they had been here. Eli knew it was simply the hollow reaching out across the thin barrier of reality. The whispers began again, clearer now, as if 1,000 voices spoke all at once in a language no living thing had ever known. The sound made the skin crawl, the mind itch. Eli gripped the case, though it was open, the starborn drifting above it, the hum from the creature steady and strong. He leaned forward and spoke into Thor's ear, take us as close as you can without touching it when I tell you to cut power to everything. Thor did not ask why, he only nodded, his eyes narrowing as he guided the craft forward. The pale light at the hollow's heart swelling in the viewport, the starborn floated to the front of the cabin, its glow spreading until it filled every shadow, its crystalline shards turning slowly, arcs of energy crackling between them. The hollow moved faster now, its tendrils of shadow stretching outward. One passed across their path, and for a moment Eli saw the void beyond it vanish, replaced by a place without stars, without sound, without time. Thor pulled them clear, his jaw tight, his eyes still locked forward. Eli felt the starborn's pulse quicken, the hum rising to a pitch that set his teeth on edge. He knew it was ready. He shouted now, and Thor's hands flew over the controls, cutting power to the engine's lights and shields. The cabin fell into darkness. Only the glow of the starborn and the pale light of the hollow remained. For a moment the hollow hesitated, as if confused, then its tendrils reached for the starborn, the pale light in its center flaring bright. The starborn pulsed once, twice, then released a burst of energy that filled the cabin with blinding light. Eli felt it pass through him like a wave of warmth and cold all at once. He could not breathe, could not think. The light tore outward through the void, striking the hollow's form. Wherever it touched, the shadow peeled away like smoke, and when the pale light at its heart flickered, the tendrils pulled back, writhing. The whispers turned to a low howl that made the hull tremble. Thor's molten eyes widened, not in fear, but in awe. The starborn pulsed again, brighter than before, and the hollow's vast shape began to collapse inward, folding on itself, the stars beyond it returning as the shadow receded, each pulse shrinking it further. The pale light at its center dimmed to a spark, the howl faded into silence, and in the space where the hollow had been there was nothing but the quiet drift of starlight. Eli slumped back into his seat, the starborn's glow dimming, the hum in the cabin fading to nothing. Thor reached forward and slowly powered the ship back on. The systems flickered to life, the controls steady again. He looked back at Eli and the starborn, his gaze unreadable. It is done, the warlord said, his voice low, but the way he spoke made it sound less like a statement and more like a question. Eli shook his head. Not yet. The hollow is not destroyed, only driven back. It will return when it has healed, and when it does it will come for the starborn again, and for anyone who stands in its way. Thor leaned back in his seat, his molten eyes fixed on Eli. Then where must it go to be safe? Eli looked down at the starborn, the small crystalline creature, drifting back into the case, settling as if tired. There is a place beyond the edge of known space, a dead world that was once the heart of the Starborns, kind if it rests there it can hide from the hollow, for a time long enough to grow strong again. The warlord considered his words, then nodded slowly. And until then, human, you will remain with me. Eli raised an eyebrow. And why is that? Because Ka, Thor said, his voice like stone grinding on stone, you are the only one it listens to, and if it must remain hidden, then I will see that no one takes it, not the Syndicate, not the Hollow, not even you, if you decide to turn against it. Eli met his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough, warlord. Ka, Thor turned the ship toward a new course. The star leans, shifting on the displays. The Syndicate ship, nowhere to be seen, likely fled at the sight of the Hollow's retreat. The void ahead was clear, but heavy with the knowledge of what had just been faced, and what would one day return. The Starborn's light flickered once in the case, as if in agreement. The hunt was over for now, but the shadow of the thing that had hunted them would follow always. The warlord's ship drifted through the quiet stretch of space, its engines low and steady, the stars distant and cold beyond the viewport. The pale afterglow of the Hollow's retreat faded into the dark. Thor sat at the controls, his molten eyes fixed on the new course, while Eli Drake sat across from him, the metal case. Between them, the Starborn resting inside, its light faint but steady. For a long time neither spoke. The silence, thick like the air before a storm. At last Thor's voice broke it. Human, you know that what lies inside that case could shape the galaxy for 1,000 years. Eli nodded slowly. I know, and I know that is why it has to be placed somewhere no one can reach it, not the Syndicate, not your enemies, not mine, not even you. Thor's gaze narrowed. And you trust me to take you there? I trust that you are too stubborn to let anyone else have it, Eli replied, and that you would rather guard something this rare than see it burn for power. The warlord leaned back, his black armor catching the faint light of the cabin. You call me stubborn, yet you walked into my path, knowing I could have ended you in the starport, knowing my warriors would have cut you down, and still you smiled and called me cute. Eli's mouth curved into the faintest grin. You did not kill me, and that tells me everything I needed to know. Thor's claws tapped against the console, his gaze shifting to the case and the small flicker of light within. What you ask, human, is not simple. If I take this thing beyond the edge of the maps, my name will vanish from the wars. I will be absent when my enemies move. My throne will weaken. Then Eli said softly, maybe the galaxy will see what you are without the war. Maybe they will see something other than a predator. For a moment Thor's molten eyes held his, and in that silence the ship seemed to slow, as if the void itself waited for the warlord's answer. The decision came without words. Thor turned back to the controls and adjusted their heading. The Starlines shifted the new path, leading them away from the routes of traders and raiders into the cold, unmarked space, where maps grew uncertain and sensors sometimes lied. Days passed, though time felt strange in the deep. The small craft slipping past dead stations and silent asteroids through nebulae that glowed faintly in the dark. The Starborn's light grew stronger each day as they moved further from the reach of the Syndicate, and the hollow Thor spoke little, though sometimes Eli caught him watching the Starborn with an expression that was not quite hunger and not quite wonder. On the 7th day they reached the system. Eli had spoken of a dying star casting weak light across a single planet, scarred and broken, its surface split by deep canyons and plains of blackened glass. Thor brought the ship down through the thin atmosphere, the sky a dull red, the ground silent and still. They landed in what had once been a great valley, the remains of vast structures jetting from the earth like the bones of a giant long dead. Eli stepped out into the cold, thin air, the case in his hands, the Starborn's glow casting faint light across the ruins. Thor followed his heavy steps, crunching on the black dust, his gaze scanning the horizon. This was their home, Eli said softly, his voice carrying in the empty air. They built worlds and walked among the stars. Then something came, and they were gone all but this one, the last seed. Thor looked around at the ruins. If they were so strong, why did they fall? Eli's eyes stayed on the case, because even the strongest fall when they forget why they began. They moved to the center of the valley, where a ring of broken towers still stood. Eli knelt in the dust and opened the case. The Starborn floated free, drifting toward the center of the ring, arcs of energy dancing across the shards of its form. It pulsed once, twice, then settled, its light spilling across the ruins, the ground beneath it humming faintly as if waking from a long sleep. Thor watched in silence as the glow spread thin lines of light running along the cracked ground into the bases of the towers. The air grew warmer, a faint wind stirring the dust, and for the first time in centuries, a spark of life returned to this dead place. It will grow, Eli said, if it is left in peace. In 100 years this valley will be green. In 1,000 this world will live again. Thor's molten gaze lingered on the starborn, then on Eli. You could have kept it for yourself, ruled with it, shaped the galaxy as you wished. That, Eli said, is not my place. They stood in the fading red light of the dying sun, the starborn, between them, Thor's expression unreadable. Then slowly he reached up and unfastened the clasp at his neck, his black cloak falling from his shoulders. He placed it on the ground before the starborn, a gesture Eli had never seen from him before. This, he said, is the only promise I will make. I will guard this place until the end of my days. Eli inclined his head, then turned back toward the ship, his steps slow. Thor followed until they reached the base of the ramp. There the warlord stopped. You will go back alone, human. Eli turned to face him. And what will you tell your warriors when they ask where you have been? Thor's mouth curved slightly into something that might almost have been a smile. I will tell them the truth, that I was called cute by a fool, and that fool gave me something worth more than all the wars I have ever fought. Eli laughed once quietly, then nodded. Fair enough, warlord. They clasped forearms, the gesture firm, and without words. Then Eli boarded the ship alone. Thor stood watching as the craft lifted into the thin sky and vanished into the upper dark, the wind stirring the dust around him. When he turned back toward the valley, the starborn's glow was already spreading further across the ground, and in its light Thor felt something he had not felt in many years, not victory, not hunger, but the weight of a choice that would echo across the galaxy long after his name was gone. Far away in the cold between the stars, the hollow stirred faintly in the dark, but it did not turn toward the small light blooming on the dead world, not yet. For now the galaxy turned as it always had, unaware that one warlord and one human had shaped its future in the shadow of an old promise and a single strange word.